What is going on? We're back with the Vigor Life podcast, and today, none other than the legend himself, Dr. Mike. So great to have you on the show finally. And like I said before, we're going to try to solve a lot of the world's problems on this podcast and veer into a lot of different areas. It's great to have you on the show, man.
Thanks, man. It's good to be on.
It One of the things that I wanted to kind of dive into, it's actually the first thing that I wanted to dive into because I'm a person that loved lifting for forever, since even since I was an athlete. I love being in the weight room. But over time, I really kind of, hey, I still want to be jacked, but I want to feel good. I'm about to be 44 years old, but I want to be athletic. It's like I hate the thought of I can't go on a basketball court and play. I can't go for an 8 mile hike. And just do these athletic things. And you've been at a high level of jiu-jitsu. I think now you're past 10 years in jits. Has it been 10
hmm
years?
Yeah.
And and it's like obviously that requires conditioning, athleticism, quality movement, and everything else. And just kind of like your thoughts around that, even for yourself. But hey, like I want to have all these different things, right? I don't want to just be jacked, but I want to have a bunch of different things that I'm good at over time. Like just your thoughts about approaching that, because I know a lot of times the conversation can go around one ability,
Sure.
but kind of expanding on that.
Sure. I think there's like three core things about being able to be kind of real world effective and enjoy that real world ability. And I would say like one of them occupies maybe 60% of the equation. The other occupies probably about 30. And then the last one maybe about 10. So the first way to maximize your athletic performance in recreational sport, your ability to go on hikes, play with your kids, that sort of thing, is to make a pretty good effort at increasing your muscle mass and reducing your body fat. This was a talk that I actually just had with my co-conspirator, Dr. James Hoffman, who would be great for your show if you're ever interested in having him on. He is one of my go-to guys for kind of specific applied strength and conditioning work for actual outcomes for people like SWAT team members and police officers, firefighters, special forces, so on and so forth. And one thing he cited recently was what's the number one cause of hospitalization for police officers in a recent survey of police officers. And a lot of people think it's like, I don't know, what kind of injury do you get like falling from like climbing a fence to chase a suspect or some shit, gunshot wound? I don't know. The answer is heart attack. Because most police officers are way too overfat and way too undermuscled. The predominant way to enhance your fitness is to gain muscle and lose fat. So if you have no serious attempt at gaining muscle and losing fat, let's say 2 to 4 times per week resistance training, good adherence to dietary principles with occasional pushes into caloric deficits to lose fat. If you're not doing that and you're substantially low muscle mass compared to your peers, substantially higher body fat, the absolutely number one thing you can do with your time is just get more jacked and get leaner by controlling your diet and hitting the gym. There's just no other way to put the equation. And it really is 60% minimum of the entire ability to do things out in the real world. So I largely, like, let's say you want me to go on a walk or do a couple of games of 3-on-3 basketball. I won't do any basketball because the injury risks don't make sense for me from what I have left to accomplish with my body. But on sheer ability, I'd be okay at both of those. I have a lot of practice going on long walks, but let's say if it's through mountainous terrain, I have almost no practice with that. But like I'm fairly lean and fairly jacked, and so I can do all those things. I can't do them super well, but I can do them. So that's the first biggest part of the equation by a long shot. The next biggest part of the equation is, remember, there's three big parts. The one that occupies 30%, the next biggest part, is actually regularly practicing the activity that you want to be good at. I know that sounds crazy, But the number one best preparation for adult basketball, being in your 40s and 50s, it's two things. One, lifting and controlling your diet so that you're not overfat and undermuscled, because you will 100% fucking get hurt doing that. And number two is like get your ass to the YMCA and play 3 hours a week. That alone, man, is there's no bullshit band assisted upside down one arm cable crunch you're going to do in the weight room that's going to prepare you for basketball play like basketball play can. Specificity is king, and there's no getting around that. And so people often say, well, again, I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to be able to go, for a hike. I want to be able to play soccer. I'm like, well, how many of those things do you actually do? They're like, well, I almost never get a chance to do those. And I'm like, all right, on. Well, just like lift weights and be lean and jacked and go through a full range of motion. And maybe in your lifting, have a few dynamic moves where you're jumping off the ground or doing explosive push-ups or rows. And that covers that. And they're like, well, what about like getting better at like basketball? I'm like, motherfucker, you don't play basketball. You got to start playing, you know? Um, and playing basketball means intelligently too. Like if you're just getting back into sport and you have been out of it for a while, don't you go doing any 360 dunk attempts or fast cutting crossovers. You will snap your shit up. You got to start with some passing and dribbling, some slow moving on the court, some positional stuff, some shooting drills, playing horse and shit like that. Get your shooting back, get your arms going. Don't overkill. Don't play 5 hours of basketball on the first day you're back. Because look, you've been around the sport long enough. How many old dudes you seen fuck their shit up by doing everything I just said in reverse? Like maybe all of them or something?
Last 30, I mean, last 30 days, and I'm not shooting. Last 30 days, people I know, one ACL, one Achilles.
Yeah. And it's mostly by like being like, oh, I'm feeling my vibe again. Crack. So easing into the activity, knowing your limits as an adult, but like once you've played basketball for, 10 weeks, three times a day for an hour each time, man, you kind of know your body again and you're in the groove and your probability of injury is way lower and so on and so forth. So if you want to get good at hiking, you got to hike. You got to do it relatively regularly. So that's part two there. That's the 30% of the variance there. And so if you have someone that is relatively lean and muscular because they engage in resistance training and dietary control, and they regularly engage in the activity that they want to be good at, look, I'm telling you, they are 90% of the way to like the most fluid functional fitness they are going to have. What's the last 10%? There are some exercises, some transitional exercises, some specific exercises, some dynamic stretching routines that you can do in the gym or on the basketball court or on the field of play that can give you a little bit more of that edge. Dynamic, plyometric work, some sorts of mobility drills, full body type of stuff. There's an art and a science to that. There's a lot of good stuff and a lot of bad stuff in that part of the industry, but plenty of good stuff. And then that's the kind of stuff that you can say, okay, because I'm in the gym for 2 hours a week, I'm actually going to take the last 10 minutes of every single hour, not do hypertrophy work, but do kind of like dynamic mobility work, like a jump into a lunge and twist at the same time. Stuff that you're going to see in dynamic sporting environments. Look, you see it anyway, because twice a week, 3 times a week, you go play ball at the YMCA. But like you want to prepare your body a little bit better than just what you do at basketball. There's your minimum kind of athletic conditioning stuff. And if let's say in basketball you're learning, okay, I 3 times a week is the most I can play because my joints just hate me. I'm lifting and I'm doing a really good job with nutrition, but like I could use more cardio. If you can find time for several 15-minute sessions per week of real gnarly intervals on the elliptical machine or on the rower, then you can boost your cardiovascular capacity substantially, and that is what occupies that 10%. So that 10% isn't just weird mobility drills, it's also potentially extra cardiovascular work. Now, usually in formal sport performance for maximum results, we tell people the vast majority of your cardio is going to go through playing sport-like drills. Like in basketball, there's plenty of short, small-sided games you can do, running drills with involving the ball and moving and scooting that both work on your technical abilities, tactical abilities, and on your what we call biomotor systems, your ability to get oxygen to the right places and get wastes out. But if you're really time constrained, you're a real human being. Yeah, a couple 15, even 10-minute sessions. Check this out: 10-minute sessions. Every other minute, you go up to close to your max heart rate. Every other minute, you come down to 120 beats per minute or so. 10 minutes of that, bro, that is something you do twice a week. Your gas tank on the court is going to be way better than it was if you're just playing basketball a few times a week. You playing basketball 5 times a week for an hour and you're hustling most of that time, you don't need any extra cardio at all. You're good to go. So that's kind of how I see things. I wonder what part of that you think sounds interesting.
No, well, I definitely want to kind of dive into each one of the buckets, but I'm
Sure.
definitely with you there. I got some questions. You know, it's funny because it's like it almost sounds like going from training. I was just talking to Eric Cressy about this, like development of an athlete, right? From high school to college to pros, and like the differences, right? And in that first kind of era, it's like everything is quality movement, full range of motion, build muscle, build strength, these foundational things. And as you go up each bucket, right, it's like, well, the pros, much more skill work because hopefully they have a really good foundation of the other things
Sure.
and they don't have to work on it as much. That for somebody, like I train a lot of folks that will come in with that goal, but we haven't even worked on that 60% of which is
Yeah, man.
build muscle.
You don't look like a pro to me, bro. You don't look like you do sports at all. We got to worry about that first.
Exactly. And so from in that bucket, practicality wise, because it's like, you know, a master class on building muscle and getting leaner, but from your perspective, not just, this like how do we turn the science into the practical stuff when you're in the gym and you go like, look, this is the shit that works.
Yeah.
If in that bucket, what is the stuff that's like, if you do this, you'll be majority of the way there, and then there's all these other intricacies that you can add on top of it. But hey, that's like the cherry on top. The
Yeah.
stuff that like is really the things that you got to focus on to get that 60% bucket of building strength. And let's focus on the building muscle, building strength part first, rather than the lean part.
Yeah. Um, very, very straightforward answer there. Compound body weight, barbell, dumbbell, and machine movements that produce the most common complex muscle patterns like pushing and pulling that do not isolate any muscle specifically and that are done with what's called a maximum intent to move. So, for example, close grip benches, close grip underhand pull ups or barbell rows, deep squats, lunges, stiff legged deadlifts, deficit deadlifts, shoulder presses, upright rows. These movements aren't really for one muscle at a time, so they're incredibly efficient. They also replicate the pushing and pulling and grabbing and throwing that you do in sport. And so not only are they preparing your muscles from a strength perspective and a size perspective, but they're also allowing you to move in a dynamic, coordinated fashion, which is like a neat thing. It's something you pick up in sport anyway, but the transfer of training is easier if you do it in movements like this. They will also put you through extreme ranges of motion. I mean full squats, very, very big deficit deadlifts, full range of motion presses and pulls. So they really kind of train your body through the entire range of motion it's capable of exerting itself in and finding itself in sport performance. Partial range of motion lifting is cool in many regards, but it really falls on its face in a huge way when we're talking about transfer to real sports. Because in real sports, you will be pushed to your every single limit that you can think of at the extremes. And so having your muscles and your tendons, your connective tissues, and your kind of your motor system, your nervous system, be ready to be sort of producing force meaningfully at all extreme ends is a really, really good thing. And you want maximum intent to move because if you want to transfer to athletic performance, you don't play basketball at half speed. There are times when you have to crank. And if you exert your muscles with relatively explosive force, so for example, in a close grip bench press, you come down slow, you pause, and then you accelerate the bar off of your chest as if you're throwing it, that allows you to actually train your ability to produce maximum forces, which correlates with better movement around the court, better jumping, better sprinting, better long pass throwing the ball. One interesting thing about strength and explosiveness is someone can say, okay, let's find a use case in basketball. Long passes. Like you catch a rebound, you turn around, one of your guys is halfway down the other fucking court. You're like, oh shit, if I can get him the ball, that's it. Like we score instantly unless he flubs it in a comical manner. There are most people would say, okay, the average adult male is absolutely strong enough to overhead lob a basketball to his buddy down the court. And they'd be completely correct. The thing we learn time and again in research is the amount of strength you have and the amount of explosive ability you have buffers out your accuracy. So if you have a situation where you really need to try hard with your muscles to throw a basketball, it reduces your accuracy. But if
Mm.
you're very strong and very explosive, you can actually aim the ball really well and end up getting it far enough anyway and fast enough because you can't fucking do one of these grandma toss lobs to someone because someone else on the court's going to scoot up to him, get the ball, and that'll be that, or get close enough to guard them. So if you do one of those straight shot passes, if you're stronger and explosive and have coordinated muscle movement abilities, you're ready for basketball in like a really, really big way. Can you do some bicep curls? Sure. Tricep extensions? Yeah, you bet. Lateral raise stuff? Awesome, 100%. But if you want big transfers of training to performance, you have to train through large ranges of motion, maximum intent to move, through exercises that use multiple muscle groups in functional ways. Uh, that's really kind of how sport training works.
Yeah, see the thing about like, for example, I mean, we train so many different kind of walks of life, from the pro athletes to gen pop again that want to be able to do those things. And you'll have a lot of these arguments with, where machines come into play. And listen, I love machines, right? But like what you said is like the base foundation is full range of motion, picking again things that you can do well. But picking the right exercises in this scenario, like where somebody's like, hey, look, you can't have a bar on your back. I mean, you don't have the shoulder mobility, the hip mobility, but I still want to pick something for you that is a squat, that is kind of full body, has the complex movement, but whether that's a goblet squat, a front squat, whatever. And that, because what you're saying too is like, hey, don't just put somebody straight off on a machine if they've never done this, because you're losing that coordination that you're going to need and the range of motion. Or is it something where you're like, you know what? That's fine. Go do a hack squat.
Um, the evidence for the supremacy of free weights versus machines for the transfer of athletic performance is very small. There are reasons to believe that it could be a substantial effect, but not very good ones. So let's say the number one thing you're building in the gym is muscularity. It's the best transfer to sport performance. The number two thing is strength, which derives mostly from muscularity and also how much load you lift. So the machines are really relatively tied there with free weights. Do you get something more from also there's like the dynamic coordination of pushing all your muscles or pulling at the same time? You get that through machines just fine. Are free weights offering you the ability to do that while concerning yourself with balance and extra coordination? Yes. Does that mean that if given the choice, I still prefer, 55-45 or 60-40 free weights to machines for athletes? Yeah, probably. But then again, if machines are going to solve the task of building muscle and building strength better because you're so immobile that you can't do the free weights, oh my God, yeah, there's no way I'm going to be like, well, we just not training legs then. Yeah, hell yeah, goblet squat. The only thing with goblet squat is a goblet has to be heavy enough for you to be limited by your legs and not by your arms. Goblet squats are cool for people who aren't that strong yet, but every time I see an NBA player do goblet squats, a part of me dies on the inside because you sure as shit better be able to do at least 135 pounds for a set of 10 in the squat if you're a pro athlete. And there's no fucking way you're holding a 135-pound goblet in front of you because your shoulders and biceps will fuck off. So the movements have to be loaded in a way that makes sense. But again, someone who's not so strong and just coming back to resistance training and wants to get a little better at softball, yeah, goblet squat may be an excellent exercise for them. But then again, there's the safety bar, there's the leg press, there's the hack squat, there's lunges with dumbbells. All sorts of leg movements can be awesome. Primarily, are they building muscle, are they building strength, and are they involving, hopefully, in many cases, multiple joints sequentially added in over time. Like, if you use one joint, another joint, you get the triple extension effect, the throwing effect, the pulling effect. If that's happening, man, like the machine free weight dumbbell barbell thing is just like a very, very small point. And using any of those builds muscle and strength and coordination so much better than doing none. It's definitely a clear win for use anything you can.
And you know what? I mean, I'm glad that you kind of said that, because even for me over time now, I've got a lot of machines, the pendulum, the belt, the hack, all that stuff, because I can push the hell out of it. Because as soon as you got nagging stuff and any type of pain, I mean, you're just gonna not be able to produce force as well, right? And I've had the best gains in my life in the squat. Like I went 36 weeks straight just doing a pendulum, right? Because I'm like, feels great. I can push the
Yeah,
shit out of it, and for folks that, and a lot of, I would say, NFL guys that, year 9, year 10, year 11, it's like you want to put a bar on their back and they're like, look, I'm not going to get a lot of range on this.
yeah.
And, you're able to do this stuff and they feel great and they're able to get progress. They may have been stuck. So I think it's important for people to hear, because even growing up in, strength and conditioning, it was the argument of like, nah, man, everybody does this, everybody does a straight barbell, fuck the machines, like that's not,
It's
and
just dogma.
yeah, it's complete dogma, but you still hear it so much. So for everybody that's listening, it's almost like, hey, here's permission to go fucking hard in the paint, go on a machine, and like you'll have, so much, your results will be so much better if you guys, because it's exactly what I've seen. People that do train will come and train with us. They're like, oh, I'm stuck. Like, oh, I've been training for years. And then they're doing a squat and like not going heavier because there's something restricting them. They just can't
Yeah.
get into deep ranges of motion. Something's off, so they don't want to push it hard. And it's like that was the ceiling, right? And just letting yourself go and be like, hey, look, like this is a smart way to train if you
Yeah.
want to build strength and muscle because that's what's going to transfer.
Yeah, 100%. And sometimes when you're doing these barbell movements, it really is just like your technique sucks. And if someone was able to recoach you in a few sessions, maybe even just one, into good technique, you would be able to progress through it. But a lot of times you have to meet people where they are. And also, technique doesn't solve everything. Sometimes you really can't grab a bar. I can no longer grab a bar behind my neck. It's
Same.
partly me getting old, partly me getting shit beat out of me in jiu-jitsu, partly me being pretty jacked. I lost some muscle during the surgery recovery process I just had, and shit, I can reach way back further than I could before. I'm like, ah, fuck that. I'm not losing any muscle for this. So for me, a safety squat bar is awesome, and it always pays to examine claims on at least two fronts: claims examined on evidence and claims examined on rationale. So you're not always going to get really good evidence for some things. Sports science, exercise science, very young fields, mostly researched none of the field, just a small part of it so far. But at least on rationale, you can ask people, hey, why just barbells? And sometimes people will tell you things that are code for, I don't know, things like, just fuck what works, man, which is like cool. And on vibes, it's sweet. And maybe there's some wisdom there. But if you think like, man, if I can get a safety squat bar, or if I can get a hack squat, and it replicates seemingly 90% of the movement of the squat, and it check marks all the physiological, anatomical stuff I need from this exercise, could there really be so much magic in the barbell that not doing the barbell is like a total waste of time? Might as well just not do anything. It's like, oh man, I don't think that's true. So a lot of times when, athletes, coaches say stuff, it sounds dogmatic. Maybe they have good reasoning or evidence for it. Maybe they don't. So it's always worth a question.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that one. I mean, it's when you train people for a long time and you read a book and you're like, try to do it. Yeah, this ain't flying. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's especially when you have a large population of different folks where it's like, yeah, I've had a double hip replacement. Oh, okay. Um, this ain't gonna fly.
Yeah,
And
how are we going to stick a barbell in there?
uh, on the side of like just again the practical aspects of when if you had a person that wanted to develop like these multiple abilities and you're like, hey, look, we're gonna build strength, we're gonna build muscle, the approach of the sets and reps and like how much does it matter? And I always say for general population, listen, if you do 6 reps or 8 reps over the course of a year, it's not going to make much of a difference if you keep showing up, you keep challenging yourself. But from the standpoint of like, hey, I want to maximize this. What, are your thoughts about different rep ranges and taking things to failure, close to failure, for somebody that wants to kind of create some principles for long-term development, right? When not just like, hey, in 8 weeks, 12 weeks, I want to get the most out of it. No, like these are some principles to follow when it comes to strength training and building muscle.
Do you want me to answer that question for people who are trying to maximize their sport ability, or people who are just trying to be athletic and into their later years and having some muscle and some lower body fat? Two
Yeah,
very different answers.
yeah, people that want to maximize their athletic ability into the later years.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I would say sets of 10 to 15 reps are probably preferred in most cases. Over 15 reps at a time does really grow a lot of muscle, but it probably reduces your faster twitch qualities, your explosive qualities through fatigue and through just high repetitions and retraining your brain to do those. Um, that's probably not ideal. Sets of below 10 reps is probably in that area where the injury probability and the degree of it beating the shit out of your joints is itself a problem. Hypothetically, going down to sets of three in various strength phases is good for young, healthy athletes trying to become the best at their sport in their teens and 20s and 30s. But once you get into your adult years and you're just trying not to, it's just trying to keep your hobbies going and having fun and maximizing that, Then I say sets of 10. Anything below that can work. Sets of 8 are fine, but sets of 6 is a bit more of a struggle to justify. Again, on the rationality side of like, you bruised up your shoulder benching sets of 5, and someone's like, "What do you get out of sets of 5s? You wouldn't get out of sets of 8." I mean, it's like there's very little daylight between those, but it's way less weight sets of 8, and it builds probably more muscle than sets of 5s by some small margin. And so it's kind of like, okay, you're sacrificing just going heavy for arguably relatively the same amount of muscle. What's the injury risk here for? Maybe you're going to be more explosive, but the getting hurt is a real big deal for folks that are older. And so I would say anything around and above sets of 10 and around and below sets of 15, I think isn't like the answer for how to be there all the time, but it's a little bit of kind of like a normal distribution that's centered around 12.5 reps per set. And one standard deviation on each side is, 15 and 10. And so like somewhere between there, you're going to get really, really good training results. A little heavier is okay if you can tolerate it. A little lighter is okay if you have to do it. But right around there is probably my guess for a rep range that works the best. And for sport performance, failure training significantly reduces your explosiveness, and it also adds to a lot of fatigue, which can raise your chance of injury, not in the gym, very likely, but certainly when you're playing. High neuromuscular fatigue leads to lower coordination, more mistakes. I've been hurt myself on high fatigue training in jiu-jitsu and stuff. You basically like, you're going to feel like butterfingers, and like your feet don't belong to you. And that's a really good way to get hurt if you're doing dynamic stuff. So I would say stopping 1 or 2 reps shy of failure is really good practice, probably more like 2 or 3 reps shy of failure, but making sure each rep is hard. Each rep is producing a ton of force, a ton of velocity, and you're getting to a point where like reps are hard to do. As long as you do that and you do enough sets, you're going to be in really, really great shape. If you want to maximize hypertrophy, going a little closer to failure might make sense, but then you'll be like one of these kind of very slow, muscle-bound feeling bodybuilders like me, and you won't have a whole lot of athleticism.
Yeah, but that's a great point though, because it's very easy to, go, hey, look, you should take some stuff to failure. But then the next day you got a 90-minute, 5-on-5 game, and that might not be the
Yeah,
best idea, of all time. And
for
you know
sure.
what, that kind of brings me to this, and also how might this apply into your world? Because how many times a week do you do jits?
Currently 0 because I'm recovering from surgery, but typically nowadays like 2 or 3. Yeah.
2 or 3. Okay. Is this idea of like, not just the idea, but like people talk about interference effect and like just how you put stuff together, right? Where, hey, I want to be good on the mats so I can actually get better and get more skilled. How does, strength training, conditioning, any type of other training fit into a whole training week when you are doing things like, for example, jits 2 or 3 days a week? What are some, and first of all, like interference effect, how real is it? And does it matter as much as was once thought to matter? But then just how you organize the week to get the most out of it, where you can't maintain build muscle and still get your sports training in.
For older folks, the interference effect is massive, and it mostly concerns your probability of chronic long-term wear and tear injury. Jiu-jitsu, for example, just really fucks with you. I mean, it's a sport designed to try to get you hurt. That's actually the end state of every move. And basketball is way more injurious than jiu-jitsu by some large multiple. Because anytime you run and anytime you leave the ground in a jump, the probability to get hurt on the way down is like way higher than if you just stay on the ground. Also, basketball has a ton of repetitive movements, which cause wear and tear problems. So if you lift, in addition to that, lifting to some limited amount, 2 or 3 times a week, relatively low volumes, a few sets of every major move like pushing and pulling, etc. Probably reduces your overall injury risk and enhances all the outcomes. Much more than that will add so much fatigue that it'll start to make the entire system more likely to experience injury. There's also the fatigue component. There's so many hours of hard training you can train with per week, given that you have a career and family and everything else. Any more hours than that exceeds your maximum ability to recover, your maximum recoverable volume, and it just makes you worse. So you have to really first find out how many hours of hard training of various kinds do I even have in me? And then you have to ask the question of, okay, given that like basketball or jiu-jitsu or whatever is my number one hobby, how much lifting can I squeeze in that still keeps it under that maximum recoverable volume that ends up making everything better? So if I was predominantly interested in jiu-jitsu, I'd probably weight train 2 or 3, maybe 4 times per week for 30 minutes to 45 minutes at a time. And the rest of 5 or 6 sessions would be jiu-jitsu. I'm focused in the completely opposite direction. I do pretty much almost exclusively technical work and very limited effort live rolling for jiu-jitsu just a few times a week because I'm trying to really optimize for my physique. And the jiu-jitsu thing is just something I kind of don't want to suck at and also want to develop a little bit of a fine-tuned game for later when I start competing again, maybe down the line when they invent cool new drugs or surgeries to make sure I don't pop my shit open or just fix it when it does. So um, the balancing act is a big deal. Now, if you're young and healthy, it's not as big of a deal. If you're older and more beat up, more probability you'll have injuries, more fatigue from work and family and all kinds of stress, then yeah, it's a big trade-off. And you can't, one of the number one recommendations here is don't just add stuff. Don't just be like, I do jujitsu 4 days a week. I'm just going to add 2 weight training sessions. See if you can recover from something of that magnitude by slowly inching toward it. Don't just add like 50% more work and be like, I'll be fine, because maybe you will and maybe you won't. And if you do add stuff and you feel after a few weeks you're really fatigued and you're feeling slow and sluggish, deload and then think about, okay, maybe like 3 sessions a week of weights plus 4 sessions of jiu-jitsu was overkill. I'm gonna stick with 4 sessions of jiu-jitsu because that's helpful for me because I want to do it. But maybe I'm gonna do like 2 weight training sessions a week. And you do that, and then for 4 or 5 weeks you feel great. Deload, repeat, and you're like, okay, I found my sweet spot. And as far as sequencing during the week or during the day, it's a bit of a different answer for jiu-jitsu and basketball. Sports that are highly explosive and require you to transit around the court, and in which the core techniques are kind of fundamental, and the rest of you is kind of stringing athleticism together with these core techniques. Um, those kinds of sports, basketball, soccer, etc., they're best played and practiced fresh, and then lifting can occur later in the day or the day after or something like that, so that you can freshen up before you play those sports. Like if you do any kind of upper body work and you try to go play basketball, your shot percentage is going to fall by like some insane amount. Your coordination ability with cramped biceps and triceps is just gone. There's nothing to save. With jujitsu, there's another dynamic at play where you learn jiu-jitsu best if you don't go all out crazy and use all your muscle. And as a matter of fact, you learn jiu-jitsu well if you're not quite as strong and you have to use finesse and technique in order to get where you want to go. And also, jiu-jitsu beats the shit out of you so much that training with weights after jiu-jitsu even later that day could just be a non-starter. You're like, my joints aren't not doing this. They're super dried out. Everything hurts. And my muscles feel kind of sort of low-key torn a little bit. So with jiu-jitsu and other sports like it, wrestling, etc., you're probably better off training before the sport or earlier in the day with weights, and then later you train the sport. And then when you're competing, you compete fresh, and you actually get like a huge boost. Obviously, last few weeks before competing, you would do very little, if not zero, weight training, and then learn how to compete in your fresh body. So, a little bit of opposite advice for those sports is kind of my take.
Yeah, that's a great take. I just have two things that come to mind. I mean, number one is, which one do you want to be a priority? I'm glad that you mentioned like, hey, I still focus for you, you focus on physique, building muscle, and then jits comes as a second thing. I got some folks for sure that are like, hey, basketball's number one, but I want to be better at basketball and be healthier, and so the strength training comes second, and you have to look at that. And the other
Yep.
thing that is really important that you brought up is like in the NBA, there's an index. You have like a 28-day running kind of average volume of training, and they compare the current 7 days to it. And if that
That's
number is
awesome.
1.4, which is like basically, hey, 40% more work, the injuries go up. I think it's like 200 to 400%. But
Yep.
I think the key there is that, like, for anybody that's general population that wants to do athletic stuff, if you just turn it up from 1 week to the next and add 50, 60% more workload, it's going to be a shit show.
Yeah.
And and I think you brought that up. It's like you got to take something where you really have to look at stuff and go like, hey, did I just make and this is what I've seen kind of weekend warrior stuff. Hey, basketball season started. I am now doing 2 to 3 games per week, but for the
Uh,
6 months I've done nothing. That's where you see what I said earlier. There's like two people that I know that got an ACL and a Achilles in the last 30 days, but that was the approach, right? It was just like I'm just jumping straight into it.
Huge. Two things I can say about that. One is that instead of increasing your volume by a ton. Just try to increase it by a little and just hold the pattern for a while. You want to get into lifting, you already play basketball. Start lifting twice a week. Not a ton either, 20 minutes at a time. And then just do that. Don't increase the next week. Just do that for a month. At some point, you're going to be like, this feels great. And man, I'm so easily recovering. Now that you have that data point of I'm so easily recovering, you can add a little bit. And then next month, add a little bit more. A year later, you're training weights 4 times a week, 40 minutes at a time. You're jacked, you're lean, everyone loves you. You're finally getting blowjobs from your estranged wife. Everything's awesome. And so there was never really a need because people say, like, you come in and they make the mistake of saying, okay, 20 minutes this week, 20 minutes later this week, and then they feel great, and then next week they're like 40 minutes. And that's a big problem. Just to your point that you said about the NBA's tracking system, we've known for a while now in sports science is one of the most dependable findings in sports science, as far as I last looked. Rapid escalations in volume exposure for sport activity cause higher injury rates immediately thereafter. You're just summing up a ton of fatigue your body's just not used to dealing with. So it's a bad deal, and people need to just have some patience if they want to stay injury free and say, okay, 2 days a week, I'm just going to do 2 days a week. And I'm not changing that for a while. When I'm for sure like feeling my vibe, everything feels good, then I can think about changing it. It's the environment of the attitude of patience, which patience is a really good thing to have in a lot of walks of life. This one especially, you're going to want to have had patience unless you're, sitting in the back of an ambulance with a torn ACL and you're like, oh, God damn it. Why'd I do this to myself? The other thing I want to say is probably, it's so difficult to pick what I was going to say, one of the stupidest things that people do in sport performance. There's so many candidates. A thing that stands out that I think is just profoundly dumb, for lack of a better term. Like, we've all done this. I've done this a ton. So I'm not trying to bash anyone that's saying you guys are stupid. I'm stupid person number one in this case, but we can all be dumb together. One of the dumbest things you can do is assume that because you used to play a sport, be it weeks, be it months, be it years ago, that you're just good to start back up. And everyone knows you're not going to be able to do what you used to because it takes a few weeks, few months to get back into your best shape. But people say, well, I'm just going to do the best I can now. And they think that's the on-ramp. It's like, well, like I used to be able to run like a 12-second 100 meter. Now I'm just running like 15 max. I'll just start with 15s. No, 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 no. No, no. You start with jogging and you start with sprint, start, and transition drills. Very little of that in your first week. And then after 4 weeks, you're doing something like decent reps of half sprints. 4 more weeks later, you're full sprinting, now at 13 seconds. And so, why the hell ease in like that? It takes a long time to get not into shape. That for sure takes a long time. Much less time than people think, because your body gets back into its swag in the period of weeks. But something that we learned in my PhD program, you have to get athletes in shape to train. Obviously, it's kind of a contradiction in terms because, like, what the hell does that? Well, training, there's two types of training. There's what used to be called in the Soviet system kind of general physical preparedness, and then special physical preparedness, which is like specialized sport training for whatever sport you have. But specialized makes it seem like it's like the fancy and like only exactly like everything looks like a soccer ball, even the dumbbells when you're a soccer player. It's really just conventional sport training. The general prep training they used to do before that is because after typical world championships or Olympic cycles, the athletes would take a month or two or even 3 completely off of sport, which by the way healed up every nagging injury they had. It's a fucking phenomenal model. Psychologically, it really reinvigorates them to get after it again. Then when they would come back a few months later, they would not just start practicing the sport at full tilt. They would be doing mobilization exercises, deep bodyweight lunges, push-ups, ab crunches. They'd be doing some cardio. They would be doing easy drills in their sport, slow movements. And then a week later, they do a little more, a little more, a little more. Now, take that model for elite fucking athletes and compare it to guy who hasn't played cricket in a while, who lives in Metro London. His buddies are in a cricket league. He's like, oh, I'll do this shit. Swings the fucking bat, pulls his lat off, and then now he's in the NHS, like recovering from muscle reattachment surgery. People seem to think that they can just go back and do the same shit that they have always done. And I cannot offer any worse advice than to agree with that idea. Does that make sense? I'm sorry I'm getting really passionate about this, but
No, no,
every time someone gets hurt, just getting right back into sport, like, a guy hasn't played basketball in 20 years. He used to be an NCAA, like, all-star. He's like, he throws up to YMCA, his kids playing. Some adults like, hey, you want to get in? He's like, yeah, fucking hand me the rock. Do not hand me the rock. Are you kidding me? That is a prescription for getting fucked up.
no, I love that. You know what's funny too is like I grew up I was born in Yugoslavia in '81, so Eastern Bloc. You know what I
My
mean?
man, well, yeah,
And
I'm from
and
Russia. So
and
where in Yugoslavia are you from? What's the country called now? Otherwise,
Slovenia. I'm from
oh, Slovenia, very cool. Neat.
yeah the smallest. We're kind of inching there in Western Europe, but still the Balkans. So
You guys like your basketball though, huh?
oh man, dude.
Yugoslavian basketball is a big deal.
See, we could dive into that. I was if Yugoslavia was still together today, think about just the starting five of that. I mean, you got Doncic,
Yeah.
Jokic, Zubac, Bogdan. I mean, it's
It's like half
nuts.
the NBA.
Yeah, it's a pretty gnarly one.
Yeah, oh
And
yeah.
but what was crazy is that like we went through these phases of what you thought was right, right? So we would do these. I mean, again, aerobic work, long runs, and just talk about GPP. And you're like, oh shit, why are we doing this? Then later on, it was like, oh, that stuff's making you slower, right? Or there was the
Yeah.
phase of going like that stuff makes you slower. But really we were doing exactly that, where it was like, off season, you take a break, then you come back and you're really, really building up the GPP before you start bumping up
Yes.
intensity. And in between, I remember even myself when I was, I don't know, probably 6, 7 years into strength and conditioning and career, and all this stuff came out. I was like, we were wasting our time. Coaches were making us slower, fucking idiots, right? And
Yeah.
then really as kind of I wouldn't say science advances, but just understanding it better is like, no, that's how you're supposed to do it. And at my peak when I was playing my third year pro ball, I was like, I didn't look like a basketball player. Like I'm 6 foot, I was 206. I could deadlift 500,
Jacked.
squat
Fuck yeah.
450, 39-inch vertical. And I had really great conditioning too, because I was also like, I was a geek about this shit, right? Studying
Yeah,
it.
of course.
And, but this idea, the idea was, because my coach was like, dude, who does your training? I was like, well, I study this stuff. I'm into it. And I started writing, strength and conditioning programs for our basketball team,
That's
right?
awesome.
But you can have a lot of these properties and abilities, but the runway to get there is so much longer than what
Yeah.
people want it to be,
Yeah.
right? Oh shit. Okay, great. I'm gonna fucking start doing depth jumps, clanging and banging, like maxing
Oh,
out.
jeez.
And it's like it's the worst thing that you can do, but it goes back to what you said, which is patience. Um,
Yeah.
and that just the frame of mind to go like, hey, do I want to do this for a long time, or do I want to feel cool, and then I'm reattaching some shit like in about 2 months, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
There,
no-go.
there's also like the biggest thing about returning back to sport play and training isn't that you're doing it. It's how hard. If you are that, like, fictional retired basketball player that hasn't touched a ball for 20 years, and you get on the court with some guys that are just, they're just kind of getting onto your skin. Let's go, man. You used to have this. If it's full court basketball, jog up and down, take a pass, set up you got better court awareness than everyone who didn't play at college. So all of a sudden, you can, like, you can be a great assist person. Um, Take a few easy shots when you're open. Set up a pick here and there. Do a little easy layup without leaving the ground much. That's totally fine. You can put fucking 10 points on the board for your team, have 8 assists, and people are like, man, he's not that great. And the other guy who knows shit's like, he's fucking around. He just doesn't want to fuck up. Like, I'm telling you, the way he's moving is way too smooth. He can fucking uncork it anytime. What I'm saying is, don't uncork it. Don't just start dunking backwards on people and shit, because that's how you get fucked up. And if you wanted to really get back into playing shape, week one is just kind of bullshit. Week two is like, okay, I'm moving a little faster up and down the court. I'm trying to cross over to. Week three is feeling your vibe. Hey, by week four, man, you're playing at a pretty high level. But that slow, gradual exposure, that's what makes you not get fucked up. So I'm not saying don't go out there and, throw the ball around. You got to, like, just do like long distance running and only gym work for a month before we let you into on the court. No way, you can do a ton of stuff, but that stuff can't be consistent, high output, explosive activity at your limits that lasts for 15 or 20 minutes at a time. Like guys trying to hustle up and down the court, take passes, take like just set up like hard picks and stuff. All right, fine. If you don't get hurt, my man, gift of luck. If you get hurt, just don't be surprised. That's all I'm trying to say is the graded exposure is the big part. And if you don't like endurance running and all that stuff, you don't have to do it. That's kind of one of the cool things we learned in sports science more recently is that the Soviet model, the Eastern Bloc model was completely correct that you need general preparation before you get into your specific sport training. You need that ramp. But now we know that the components of that ramp can be much more sport specific than we thought previously. So instead of having basketball players do let's say like just like jogging for like I don't know 30 minutes or something, what you can have them do is do a little bit of a somewhere between a jog and a half sprint halfway to the court, take a pass, jog half slash half sprint to the other side of the court, throw a pass, and repeat that over and over. Turn, pass, turn, pass, turn, pass. And the player they're passing to moves around the court a little bit every now and again. So they're getting court awareness built back up. They're getting their dynamics of passing and receiving passes, giving passes. And at the same time, they're moving the entire time and pretty fucking fast. Not psychotic sprint speed to get you hurt. That's something that is both checking the boxes of specific to basketball, skill, techniques, tactics, and hits that cardio component. Because when you're on the treadmill or when you're just running around the track, there ain't a whole lot of basketball going on in any part of your body. Now, your lungs and your heart and your blood vessels and everything, your muscles are getting aerobic capacity increased. That's awesome. But you can do that in basketball related ways. So, what I'm trying to say is there's running, there is full court basketball at 100%. There are things between there that are very basketball specific that are challenging the cardiovascular system that can be graded in exposure. Today we did 10 minutes of this drill. Next week we do 15, then we do 20. We start increasing how much basketball we're playing. We're starting to spread the court out. We're going from 2-on-2 to 3-on-3 to 4-on-4 to 5-on-5. Eventually we're playing basketball again. It's just 2 months, and then we're full into our season. The next 7 months we just do our regular basketball training. We just didn't have to dive in right away. Diving in right away is stupid. And it's better to do graded exposure through non-basketball things than to just dive into basketball. But the optimal thing is to figure out how you can scale your basketball training such that it's both graded and effective for basketball. That's the ultimate unlock.
That's a great example. Actually, before I started playing, meaning pump, because I've done a bunch of those, right? Where I play for like a year and then I
Yep.
drop off. And I just got back by doing skills training and even
Yes.
coach sometimes for skills training because it's half court. You can still ramp up the intensity over time. You're doing the drills, but at the beginning it's slower. When you were saying like play this way, I'm like, oh, you basically want people to play like Nikola Jokic. Got it. Right? Like I mean, because he looks like he's never being exploded. Obviously, like I love the guy. I think he's one of the best players in the world. But it's like you're not going to see him do something extremely explosive because he's a high IQ guy. He's going to get you up for the pump fake 3 times, and he can set the screens and everything else. So
Yeah.
that's the go-to right there.
100%. And obviously, that stuff makes you better at the skills and tactics of basketball. Once you're in shape enough and lower enough injury risk to really show off your physicality, that physicality has been built up the entire time. It'll be there for you. The number one reason, two reasons why guys get into it too quick, get too physical, and get hurt when in the ramp up periods. Reason number one is ego. They just want to be able to stunt on people. Like I'm playing a pickup game, motherfucker. I ain't ramping up. I'm stepping on your head. Fuck you, Vince Carter. But the reality is, you're not Vince Carter. You're just on a hospital bed. And the other thing is just straight up like laziness, bro. Like it's so rewarding psychologically to just play pickup games. How many people want to go do fundamentals work for an hour straight? How many people want to set up like specific plays and walk through the play and then jog through the play with no ball? Nobody wants to do that shit. I got to get your ass to memorize where the fuck you're supposed to be on the court. How the fuck are Eastern Europeans so good at basketball? They play a technical ass game. They play a team based game. Like individually, one for one, they're very talented, but sometimes not quite as talented as just raw physical American basketball. But when you can do both the technical elements, boring ones, and you have the raw physical talent, who do you turn into? Kobe, LeBron, Jordan. Like, can you imagine showing up to, you've heard about how Jordan was as a person back on the court. Can you imagine showing up and be like, I'm not doing technical work, man. I just want a ball. Jordan would beat you to death. Like, we're doing everything we have to do. And so a lot of times when, there's a month ramp up in intelligent basketball to actually get you into full dynamic basketball again, the reason guys get into like, 3-on-3 play and bust their ankle is because they just like don't want to fucking do all that like stupid dribbling and passing and shooting and various drills and movements because that stuff's boring compared to real play. Yeah, of course it is, man. But the question is, do you want to be a little bored for a couple weeks and then be at your best again? Or do you want to be lying in a hospital bed with your leg all swollen up and the doctor being like, well, you're never going to play basketball again. Hopefully we can get you to walk. Like, fuck that, man.
Yeah, man. So the theme is consistent, is with every aspect of this, whether it's strength training, whether it's getting back to basketball, it's always the patience aspect. And I mean, I did want to touch on this just because, and I've listened to a ton of your shows speaking about it. Um, when it comes to like getting leaner, getting healthier, fat loss aspect of it, the patience aspect on that, and I do want to touch a little bit on the Ozempic part too. And part of it too is because I have quite a few clients on it and like
Mhm.
thoughts around it. Like there's a very kind of black and white pendulum swing on it. Um,
Yeah.
but so far as kind of like the basics of getting leaner, and again, real world stuff. And because that's the other thing that you talked about too. Like, what are these drivers of people that have a harder time with losing weight, um, and
Yeah.
what to do about it in the practical world. And then I want to touch on that too, as far as like weight loss drugs and your thoughts around that.
Yeah. I think the number one reason why people get over fat and stay over fat and overweight is from eating too many super tasty foods. And notice I'm not saying junk food because if you eat 2 bags of potato chips and like a ho ho, it's junk food, it's tasty, it's high in calories, you're eating too much of it, you're going to get fat. But if every other day you go over grandma's house and she makes you, at home, portobello mushroom, very high amount of butter and Parmesan cheese pasta sauce pasta, she could even be using olive oil and plenty of veggies with it. It's super healthy. It's super homemade, but it has a fuckload of calories and tastes amazing. And you always have 3 servings of it. You're going to overeat and you're going to gain weight. So, one of the number one ways that you can reduce your body weight and succeed in a diet is to tell yourself, okay, the diet for the following 8 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it is going to be eating for function more than it is a little bit for enjoyment. And that means I'm going to stick to mostly minimally processed healthy foods, lean meats, veggies, fruits, whole grains, healthy fats. And I'm going to make sure the food tastes decent, but not in a way that like I just can't fucking wait to eat my next meal. It's driving me crazy. You don't want to do that because super tasty foods and high calorie super tasty foods are pretty much the cause of the obesity epidemic. Like, I'm interested in debating technical people on this. I do not debate non-technical people on this anymore because like it's obvious from every vector of analysis. It's obvious. And so your biggest unlock is to return yourself personally to a food environment in which you got some chicken and some broccoli and some whole grain pasta and a little bit of olive oil on that, a little bit of seasoning. You're not super crazy about that. And it's filling. And you eat your meal. You don't want another meal for 4 hours. You eat your meal. Don't want any meal for hours. You do that 4 times a day. And boom, you are just succeeding. And someone's like, do you feel really restrained and constrained and hungry? You're like, not really. Just a little bored, I guess. And so that's really how you unlock the diet situation. Interestingly enough, with drugs like Ozempic, and mind you, there's better drugs than Ozempic now. There's Manjaro, which is a terzapatide, is what its
Yeah,
technical
actually,
name
one of my
is.
clients was on Manjaro.
Yeah, Manjaro is amazing. And there are new drugs coming out like retatrutide that are even better. And so drugs like Manjaro are one of the number one things they do is they decrease psychologically, well, neuropsychologically, they decrease your deep desire of tasty food. And they allow you to get full faster. And the ultimate unlock isn't using these drugs or a healthy diet, it's both. And as a matter of fact, they have this crazy synergy. Whereas, like, without Manjaro, you desperately want a ton of super tasty food. And you like don't get full on it for a while. So you can eat a ton of it and like because you're in real bad shape. If you eat less tasty food and you eat it in good portions, it can for some people be pretty tough to do because then they're just like really, really hungry and they never get full. If you eat super healthy food, it's easier to get full because it's full of fiber, it's full of volume, and it's all that stuff. It's not as calorie dense. So you're doing really well for yourself, but maybe you need help. So if you take a drug like Manjaro or tirzepatide, aka same thing, then you end up doing this thing where your goal is to eat healthy meals that are calorically constrained. You take the drug, and all of a sudden, not only do you not really want a ton of junk food, but you also get full really fast. So your meals no longer feel constrained. They feel like this is a lot of food. And also, one of the number one problems with people who take these kinds of drugs is they continue to eat their super high calorie, super junky diet. And after half a plate of their super high calorie, high fat food, it turns out that your body now processes food so much slower. It kind of stops up in your stomach. It causes heartburn. It causes vomiting. It causes sickness. It causes diarrhea and all this other stuff. So not only do these drugs make you want that food less, now that you're eating healthy food, which you can now eat because it doesn't make you super hungry and keeps you nice and full, you actually are eating food that just comports much better because if you're eating healthy, low calorie density food, you feel amazing on Ozempic and Manjaro. If you're eating high calorie, like real easy way to have a bad time, get out a sleeve of super deluxe chocolate chip cookies and a glass of whole milk, down that shit when you're on Ozempic or Manjaro. You're gonna have a real fucking bad time. You're going to feel sick for hours and hours. You might throw up. You might poop, all kinds of weird stuff. It's just super, super bad deal. And people say, oh man, these drugs are terrible. Like I have an aunt that uses them and she's sick all the time. Well, your aunt can't lay off the fucking Cheetos. But the thing is, you're saying, well, yeah, she still has cravings. Yeah, there are two different kinds of cravings. One is like a deeply physiological drive, like something you experience at the tail end of a contest diet. When you look at a piece of fried chicken and you're like, there are no children in this world I wouldn't kill to have that fucking piece of fried chicken. I'm over this shit. The other one is kind of like you're just bored and you just want something to do that's fun. And with these weight loss drugs, they kind of reduce in a major way that second thing. They can't really affect that first thing. Or sorry, that first thing is what they affect. They affect the deep physiological drive and the deep psychological drive to eat. But can you still eat junk on these drugs? Yeah. It's just what they do is they make it super, super easy for you to stick to an awesome diet. So they're amazing synergistic compounds with good dieting. Not only do they make good dieting easier to actually execute, but they make good dieting kind of mandatory if you want to feel good. If you have a bad diet still, tons of junk, tons of high calorie foods, these drugs don't help you a ton because you can still out eat the drugs and you're going to be sick all the time. You're going to have doubly a bad time.
So one quick question on this one. So what is your filter on this, right? Because you got this, you kind of don't want to encourage it's like, hey, first sign of resistance or I would say obstacle when you're dieting and you're just like, oh, I'm on these drugs or I want to lose, 12, 15 pounds, 18 pounds. What is your filter in going, hey, this is where this might be a good choice? And again, like I think it's been a great choice for a number of clients that I have. And I wanted to ask you about doses too. This is just my
Yeah, yeah,
personal thing that I've seen, but just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
yeah, yeah.
But for you, what do you think is like, okay, look, this I think for you is a good choice at this point in time.
I have a wacky take on this. I can play a couple of different sides of the argument, so I'll play one for fun that I do really mean, but I can be more nuanced than this. What's wrong with people just going to drugs right away? What's wrong with it? If you're trying to say, well, they're learning the wrong lesson, you're assuming you can teach 52-year-olds who already own their own law firm some kind of deep life lesson from dieting. You're not teaching them shit. They're done with fucking big life lessons. Unless they go on a super crazy personal journey and do a lot of introspection, then you're teaching them some shit. They need solutions. Can you imagine if someone was like, you called a computer tech because your computer's not starting up, and you're like, can you just like send me the update over the internet? He's like, well, I really want you to learn a little bit of code so you can learn to kind of overcome your problems. You're like, what the fuck? Learn code? Are you out of your fucking mind? Who do you need to speak to on service to get you fired? I want the solution now. And so when there's drugs that are effective for weight loss, like and weight loss kills people, I think it's like totally fine to just reach right for the drugs. That's the like right in the face take that's going to piss off most of the fitness nerds. You see if I give a fuck. But on a serious note, much more balanced is look, everything is a tool. You have an arsenal. One of your tools is dietary control. One of your tools is exercise. One of your tools is better sleep. One of your tools is these drugs. Use the tools that make sense at the time. Here's a world in which the tools make sense. Someone's tried dieting for a few times. Their parents are fat. Their relatives are fat. They're eating pretty damn well, actually. They just have that shit where they're just fucking fat. That happens to people. It happens all the time. And they crave food all the time and they just have a lot of fat cells because they used to be fat before. They lost 50 pounds already doing good stuff. Now they're really struggling. They come to you and they're like, I'm going to start a diet. And you're like, well, no, you should wait off on the drugs. Fuck that. Start the drugs. You'll have the best diet ever. You'll take the drugs for forever, and you'll be lean and happy, and everything will be great. That's number one. Number two is someone is like, oh, hey, I just want to lose 15 pounds. I want to start on these drugs. And I go, okay, cool. So these drugs, they kind of have some side effects. And if you kind of eat some junk, you might feel pretty bad. And they're like, well, I don't know, man. I'm not going to stop eating junk. And you're like, okay, this is a bad idea for you because I'm just going to send you to the hospital with gastroparesis if you take these fucking drugs. And so if someone's like willing to do the dieting and organizing their lifestyle and take the drugs, oh man, there's no problem with them just going right to the drugs as long as they're setting up this kind of situation where they're aware of their calories, trying to kind of maybe use one of these apps to track their shit. They're aware of physical activity constraints. They're ready to get some decent sleep. They're ready to eat some healthy foods, not blow up their guts when they're on these drugs. And fuck yeah, drug away. Fucking first thing you go to is the drugs. Great. But if you're a person who is just like, I just want like to take a pill and I don't want to worry about anything, like eventually in a few years there will be pills like that. They ain't here yet, man. And so if you shoot a lot of Ozempic and you just go fucking YOLO to your office party and eat 3 slices of pizza, you're going to be in the bathroom for hours, like throwing up pepperoni and blood. And you're going to have a really bad time with it. And then you're going to tell people, yeah, man, these drugs suck. They have these side effects. It actually just grinds the shit out of my gears when people talk about how they had a really bad time on these drugs. And they're like, everyone on social media is liking their stuff. Like, see, Big Pharma's pushing these things and they're poison. And then you talk to the person more in private and they're like, dude, I ate brownies, cheese steaks, I ate everything on this drug. And you're like, oh my God. Like, it's like saying you had a bad time visiting Yugoslavia because you went like exclusively to where there's still landmines and you crossed the wire fence and you stepped on one. You're like, oh, Yugoslavia's real dangerous. Don't go visit there. Like, did you go to like major cities and like have a great time with like the most attractive women in the world? You're like, "Bah, I didn't know there was that. I just went straight to the landmines. Like, what the hell is wrong with you?" And so it really does super depend on how trainers and coaches like yourself interface with their clients. You got to talk to your client a little bit. What are they ready to do? And are they understanding kind of what these drugs can offer you and what risks and downsides they have? If someone tells you, like, yeah, look, I don't have time for this bullshit. Just give me the drug. I'm just going to eat whatever. I'm personally, as a coach, I'm not giving them shit. They just go to somebody else to do that shit. But if they're like, look, I've tried these diets before, they never really work a ton for me. They do work for a few weeks, and I get super hungry and I can't stay on track. I really love eating healthy. I make all my meals. I just want to do something. I just want something to take the fucking edge off. Oh my God, yeah, drugs day one, diet drugs, and that's gonna be saving millions of lives already. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's gonna rub people the wrong way. But here's the thing though. Like
Sure.
I absolutely hear you, and I think my experience with working with people has like shifted my perspective on that quite significantly. And that kind of brings me to my second question. These are real world examples, right? Where I've had people, I say clients that went on drugs, and there was kind of like this gap where initially, it's like the drugs are getting kind of ramped up, and all of a sudden the person's appetite's so low that once we go over, it's like, whoa, shit, you're eating like 500 calories a day. It's like I just can't eat any, like I literally can't do it, right? And then I say, hey, let's see if you can go back to the doctor and talk about bringing kind of the dose down. And they did, and it's like it was like a kind of perfect scenario of like, oh great, I have enough appetite, not too much. I'm able to get enough protein in as I'm strength training, and it was like this perfect scenario. But what are kind of your thoughts on that about as far as like the communication between it? Is the right dose for the person so that they're not under eating because they truly have lost the appetite to eat.
It's such a big deal. I'm really glad you're bringing this up. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors, I'm not saying most, but too many doctors do one of two things. They either just prescribe at a certain standard dose, throw up two middle fingers, and see you in 2 months, maybe. The other thing they do is they do a ramping protocol, which was just a protocol designed to test the efficacy of the drugs during their trials. They start with, for Ozempic, half milligram, 1.5, and then two.
Yep.
The ramping 1 month at a time is a fine idea, but it suffers from two problems. Problem number one is you don't know how fast or slow the person is adjusting. The ramp could be way too slow or way too fast. You put them on 0.5, nothing happens. They continue to gain weight. You put them on 1, they stabilize. You put them on 1.5, they finally start losing. You just pissed away 2 months, so you could have just gotten there faster. The other problem is most people don't need the top end of the ramp. For most people, it's just about finding the dose that can get you into a calorie deficit and keep you relatively normal hunger signaling there. And for most people, for like Ozempic, that occurs somewhere between zero point 0.5 milligrams and 1.5. And 1.5 is a lot. The Ozempic dose titration goes up to 2.4 milligrams per week. If you titrate people up to 2.4, most people will experience severe digestive discomfort, nausea, vomiting, low energy, the whole thing. They'll barely be able to put liquids down, for the love of God. And so a lot of times people just get this traditional ramp where they go from zero point 0.5 to 2.4 over 5 months, and they get into real shit. So the real actual way to do this is to start very low. I actually recommend most people to start at 0.25 for Ozempic and something like 1 to 2.5 for tirzepatide. Because tirzepatide is a bit bigger of a drug, multiple drugs going on, so you actually have to take more of them to get the same effect. That's very low dose and is highly unlikely to cause pretty much any side effects. And what you'll feel within the first couple of weeks is like, I guess I'm like a little bit less hungry, a little less crazy, which is great. Remember, the beginning of the diet's also the easiest part of the diet. You don't need the crazy dose in weeks 1 and 2 of the diet. You need it in weeks, 9 and 11 or something like that. And so at first you start low, and then every week or two, you just ask the client how they feel. The crazy thing about these drugs, and one of the things that makes them so effective, is their half-lives are like a week or longer, which means that for 5 weeks straight, at any given dose you ramp up to, the amount of drug in your bloodstream is increasing that entire time. And at 5 weeks, it reaches a stable baseline. So if someone says, yeah, zero point 0.5 isn't doing a ton for me, you should wait for at least 2 to 3 weeks before concluding it's time to go up again. Because usually you wait 2 to 3 weeks and they're like, actually, yeah, zero point 0.5 is hitting now. You're like, ha, ta-da, because it's been summing up that entire time. So I rarely, if ever, if a person doesn't feel anything in 1 week, would you ever ramp up in the next week? That is a stupid idea. At least 2 to 3 weeks to see, are they catching some more momentum? And after 3 weeks, if they're like, dude, I legitimately feel no different, like, okay, fuck, go up a quarter of a milligram, half a milligram, 2 milligrams, depending on the drug, whatever it is. So that kind of delayed titration is a really good idea. And so as you move up with them in dose, they're going to get to the point where they're like, dude, this is amazing. Okay, tell me about it. They're like, I can just eat my diet that you wrote for me. I don't need anything else. I feel great. And here's your job then. Whatever that dose is, stay to that dose until and unless weeks later they go, hey, I'm starting to get the hunger back. You know, you sure? Yeah, man, it's for real. Okay, cool. Increase a little bit by a small margin. And then a few weeks later, they're like, okay, man, I'm back. This is awesome. Also, I have 2 weeks left of the diet and I've lost 15 pounds. This is a fucking miracle. And then the biggest thing after is after they're done dieting to bring them back up to maintenance intake with relatively almost exclusively healthy foods for a few weeks. Do not change the dose of the drug. Keep it exactly at diet levels all the way through a few weeks of maintenance after. What you want the client to go through is week 3 of maintenance to be like, dude, I can't eat all this food. I've maintained at exactly the weight I lost to. I can't do this, bro. The first week I was relieved to be eating a bit more. The second week I felt great. This third week now, I'm like, I don't understand how the fuck you expect me to eat this much food. Like, I've had my fill. And then you go, okay, great. Then you take them down a third or a half of their normal dose and stay there and see how they adjust. What you're going to discover is another baseline dose for them that allows them to maintain indefinitely. That dose for many people is 0. They just come right off the drug after a couple of weeks and they're like, hey, I feel great. They stay at 140 pounds or whatever they got down to, and they're like, this is awesome. So in the future, when they need to lose, another 5 or 10 pounds because they got out of shape, they take a little bit of this drug, they come off the drug, and then everything's great. For some people, they're going to be able to take very, very little of the drug just to maintain, and plenty of the drug when they need to do more fat loss phases. For still other people, they're going to need to be on a pretty high maintenance dose and an even higher dose to lose weight, just based on genetics and a couple of other factors. And so a lot of people, they have this goal where they say, okay, I want to use this drug, but I don't want to use it indefinitely. My usual question is, why? Why don't you want to use the drug indefinitely outside of money concerns? Which most people in the modern world just have so much fucking money that this is irrelevant. The thing, it's like $200 a month. It's like $100 a month from some of these subscription services. You're like, okay, really, you don't have $100 a month to just be the shape that you want to be, but you spend that in a fucking Thursday afternoon at the bar when work gets out early. Dope. So for people that it's a money concern, total respect. For people that it's not, a lot of times people say this thing like, well, I don't want to like just be on drugs. I'm telling you right now, I'm here a little early. It's still 2025. In the near future, next 5 years, People will, and should be on more and more drugs because drugs are designed to be better than not having the drug. There's a choice you can make. You can go back up to being obese by coming off Ozempic, or you can stay on Ozempic long term and never be obese again. It's a big deal. One of those is clearly the wrong answer. And does Ozempic have downsides? Yes. But can they be managed? Yeah, almost 100%. And by the way, there's a huge body of literature now on the non weight mediated health effects of these drugs. These modern weight loss drugs, GLPs, GIPs, glucagon agonists, they are like, man, almost like health elixirs. They reduce systemic inflammation a ton. They're good for brain health. They're good for mood. They make you less addictive overall. It's just these crazy, crazy benefits. So the real important thing to remember is after your clients get done with their diet, don't pull them off right away. Keep them on the same level of drug until they're like, dude, this is too much food or I'm getting pretty sick. Then reduce their drug to what allows them to maintain. And if they're like, dude, I'm maintaining really well on like 0.25 milligrams, can I just come off? You're like, fuck yeah. Who cares? 0.25 is a rounding error. And then they like come off, they gain 2 pounds, they stay there. So instead of coming down from 155 to 140, they came down from 155 and then stayed at 142. Hey, that's a huge win. And you don't have to piss away money on the stupid drug. But if you, in order for you to stay at 140 or even close to it, you have to keep taking a milligram of Ozempic per week. That's what you got to do because the alternative is you get fat again. And yeah, that's a shitty alternative.
Man, see that was a great breakdown because there's actual nuance to like how to do it and the thought process around it. But what have you found? Because for example, if a person, I would hope that like if they go back to their doctor, they've listened to this episode and been like, hey, let me replay something for you right right here.
It's like, wait,
Um,
he's going to swear a lot, but I promise he gets to the point.
because I mean, seriously though, because like you said, this is the thing that I've noticed, is there's just like this ramp up and it's like, this is what you're going to do. And then the client doesn't know, right? So they're just like, well, I'm doing what the doctor's telling me
Mm-hmm.
to go back and just have this conversation and go like, hey, can we do this? Have you got feedback where people are like, yeah, go do that, and they just tell me to stay on? It's like, are most people open to it and like, okay, cool, let's make these adjustments
It's
or
a
get a
mixed
different
bag.
doctor?
It's a mixed bag for sure. Most doctors are like, if you give them sufficient reason and explain, they'll kind of listen through and be like, yeah, that makes sense. And then that's all you hear about them. And then some doctors are like, just do what the plan is, and then that's probably just a bad doctor. And most people can get access to different doctors. Just go and get a different doctor because if a doctor cannot be reasoned with, if a doctor can't understand what you're saying and recapitulate what you're saying to them to make you feel heard, at the very least, don't bother. Just don't bother. Just be like, thank you, and then get another doctor because this is important shit. And everything I just said about titration, management, phasing through the diet is like incontrovertibly pharmacologically true. It's just best practice for every drug. The reason that a lot of doctors have like, hey, take this and just fuck off is twofold. One, they just don't have a lot of time with you and a lot of investment with you as a person. The drug works, you'll take it, you'll be fine, everything's great. The other problem is that a lot of doctors do really care, but they know that the vast majority of their patients do not have the interest in titrating these drugs in a week by week or month by month analysis. They're just not going to do it. So you tell them ramp up, ramp down, this and that. They're going to be like, huh? How much of this do I take? Because a lot of people just want one pill to take that makes it all better, one shot. How much do I put in the needle? A lot of people are so. This is me being an asshole, but it's true. Unfortunately, many people are mathematically almost illiterate to the point where they don't understand how to like how many needle notches come out of the vial to make how much drug. So much so that they used to make the Wegovy used to make the needles where you can titrate how much you can spin the needle to get however many notches you want, plug it in, put it back in the fridge a week later, put it in again. They actually have some of the modern the auto needles. Luka, they have one notch. There's no option. You either get all the drug or none of the drug. Why do they make this? Because people couldn't figure out the notching system and it confused them. And so if you're an intelligent person who really cares about their health and is an excellent trainer such as yourself to help them along, you're going to want to talk to your doctor about adjusting your own dose, telling them you know what you're doing, your trainer's helping you, giving them the reason, asking them for their opinion. 9 times out of 10, the doctors will be like, dude, that sounds fucking great, man. You're way ahead of the game. 1 time out of 10, the doctor's going to be like, no, that's too complicated. Just do this. And then you're going to want to fuck off. But for most humans, unfortunately, remember, when you work with fitness people, you are working with the people that showed up
Yeah.
because they give a shit. That's already like small fraction of the population. Most people who aren't fit will show up to the doctor's office and get Ozempic just because the doctor's like, I'm gonna give this shit because maybe it'll save your life. I mean, probably you won't take it, and then it won't. And then for those people, you just need one shot, and the doctor has no interest in nuance because nuance cannot be applied if you just don't give a fuck. Imagine trying to teach someone like a really awesome like dribbling drill. If you're like, do you care about basketball? They're like, I don't want to be here. Well, I'm not gonna teach you shit. So just do this and get the fuck out of my face.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that is a very good point. Which brings me to the last, man. That's one thing I definitely wanted to ask you is this. And okay, as we kind of move forward, and we have drugs that are obviously effective and coming into play, we have AI for programming this, that, and the other. You know, I would say the value and power of the coach, right? And of course, I'm going to be extremely biased to this. Like I've had a gym for 19 years, and fucking this is what I do.
Yeah,
But I'm also not, when we talk about this, I'm not the person that's like, you're fucking wrong. Like nobody should
sure.
take drugs because, again, it's nuance. You understand
Sure,
it,
of
you
course.
study it. But just your thoughts from a perspective of like the biggest value. But what do you believe is gonna change if we look at the next 5 to 10 years in fitness because of these changes and how the coach is gonna basically be positioned there?
Yeah. There, you can split the world roughly into the fitness world into three groups of people. Group one are people who have no interest in getting anything fitness related unless it comes in a pill or a shot that they can just take and just be okay with and then fuck off. Group two are people who are really struggling to get fit and they're using all the traditional methodologies and they're really, really struggling and they can't. It's just not enough help. Just going to a trainer and eating right is not enough help. They need more. And group three are psychotic hardcore people that want to have elite physiques, elite performance. They obsess about this all the time. Me, you, everyone we know in the industry. So as these massive drug revolutions are going to be hitting in the next few years, let's put this in perspective. There's a drug that's probably going to be approved in about 2 or 3 years for human use that grows way more muscle than steroids and has like approximately zero main side effects. Like
Do
it's
you have an
just
affiliate
just
link right now?
say that again.
Instead, do you have an affiliate link right now?
Bro, I wish Regeneron Pharmaceuticals give me a fucking affiliate link. There's only been tested on well, it's currently being tested on people. So far, the publications only on primates, non-human primates, monkeys, and it's just like it's a fucking miracle drug, and it will not be the only one of its kind. And so we say, okay, what a drug that just grows radical amounts of muscle, and a drug that controls your body weight as much as you want, which the modern drugs already do. Tirzepatide is like a fucking miracle drug. Ozempic was the original killer, right? And you get this, plus we'll have drugs in the next few years that are called exercise mimetics. You take them and your body undergoes most of the changes that exercise does, but you sort of feel the same. You burn more calories just kind of existing, and you're super, super good for your health in every way that exercise is, except for like, local joint and bone improvements. And so like this is kind of a triple threat. You get people on this and you expose this drug market, you expose these three groups of people to it. Let's see what happens. Group one, people who just never gave a shit, most of them won't even take those drugs. You'll have to convince them to take anything because they don't care. So good luck. That's a huge potential for trainers and people who make Gen Pop fitness content to reach out to those people and be like, hey, there are drugs that can help you. And the gym helps too. I know that you maybe tried the gym and it didn't work, but it's worth it. Here are the benefits of being fit. Come and take these drugs and come to the gym. We're going to have a great time. Good luck, because a lot of those people just don't give a fuck. Some fraction of them will start taking these drugs and never show up to the gym. What are we going to do about it? Nothing. Hey, listen, at least they're taking the drugs. Now they're going to be 20 pounds more muscle, 40 pounds less fat, super active. Great. Problem solved. Problem solved. Sometimes trainers act as if like we have this industry which has 100% of American participation, and any amount of drugs getting people out of gyms is like, no, those are our clients. Most people are not your clients. Most people don't give a fuck. Those people, they're never going to be in gyms to begin with. They won't, with nothing you were going to say was going to get them in the gyms. Thank God they at least have their health and wellness with these drugs. Now, what happens with the people that are really struggling and going to the gym and consuming services? You could split those, I think, into two segments. This is very, very rough approximation. One group is going to be like, finally, I don't need to do this shit anymore. You're going to lose them as clients. Cool, whatever. They can fucking get fit without you. Fuck them. The other group is going to be like, oh my God, I just got the fucking sword and shield of Athena. I am super powered. Let's hit the gym 4 times a week. I don't want to be in shape. I want to be that bitch. I want to be abs girl at the pool. I want to be Delt's mom. They're just out of this world. You're going to have clients that dip into all this, and you're just going to make like super villains and superheroes at your day job all day as a trainer. That's amazing. Of course, in that group of people, you also have people that just resist the drugs altogether. Well, they won't change, and you'll still help them as best as you can. And the next question is what happens to the hardcore folks? Well, we just had a preview because the top half of your regular folks moved into hardcore. The only reason they weren't hardcore before is like they just didn't have the genetics for it, you know? Now, quote unquote, they kind of do with these drugs. The hardcore people, it is going to be like swimming in a sea of milk and honey because you wanted fucking 20-inch arms, you got it. You want to walk around in 2% body fat, you got it. People using their bodies as artistic expressions. And that just is how it is. So it really is. You can think of it many different analogies. Think about what, let's say you get an injection, and over the course of 2 months, you grow 1.5 feet in height. How would that change the game of basketball? Would it help? Would it make people train basketball less? I mean, some people, yeah, they'd be like, I don't need to train
Well,
much. I'm 7'2".
you're
Fuck
making a
them.
fucking comeback. That's what's happening.
Oh yeah, bro, 100%. You're like 8'9" and shit. But like, for most people, they would just play more basketball because now
Mhm.
they have the genetics to play more basketball. So, is there going to be a time in which no one is at gyms, in which we don't have gyms, because one injection of a gene modifier makes you have like a Nigerian dude's body forever? Yeah, that will happen, probably in the mid 2030s. And then we just won't have gyms anymore, and we'll look back at this time as like, well, remember, like we had these buildings dedicated to like stimulating something that our genes just weren't doing by themselves. Thank God we cured that. But then again, that's the same era as like we cure all disease, we cure aging. It's a fucking miracle time. None of us need to worry about that. Money's going to be abundant. It's going to be sweet. But until we get there, for some people, these drugs are absolutely going to be a replacement to fitness. But for huge swaths of people, they're going to be the biggest empowerment ever. Right now, the number one group of people that we don't train are people don't train but could, are people that just don't think they have what it takes to even walk into a gym, or they tried and they failed. Those people are going to be so empowered by these drugs, gyms are going to fill out like crazy. Maybe not regular gyms where you just go to burn cardio off, because drugs do that just fine. More hardcore gyms, studios like yours, where you come to get real good results. Drugs are going to empower just by the thousands people to come get it, because most people don't do shit right now because they just like tried and they fucking failed. And they're like, man, I don't have the genetics to do this. And they're kind of correct in some sense. So it's kind of my take
It's,
on it. I
it's,
could be
it,
wrong about all this shit.
hey, listen, this is recorded, so we shall see.
Oh, fuck.
We'll put some bets on it. But no, you know what's cool
Oh,
because it's like it's really a psychographic thing too, right? Like you end up going, it's not just a demographic thing, but it's just a psychographic thing, like belief systems around that, right? Like even those
sure.
buckets that you talked about.
Yeah.
The people that are, for example, and they're, intrinsic, extrinsic motivation, right? Like, would you train? I mean, I would probably at this point in time train if it didn't get me results because of how I feel.
Same.
But but you have to do that for a while to go like, oh yeah, like I have this like feedback loop of like when I exercise,
Vibe.
I feel better, I feel good about myself.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be a thing that does happen, right? Where people that now have some help and they go do the shit and they go like, oh yeah, like this is fucking awesome. And then they become intrinsically motivated about training, right? Because
Yeah.
at first it's like, hey, I got fucking, I got dumped, so I'm here to get my revenge body. Carrot,
Revenge
right?
body.
And
I
it's
haven't
like,
heard that in a while. I love
oh,
it.
shit. Like, hey, I still see quite a bit of that.
That's great. Hey, listen, of all the things you could do after getting broken up with, getting your health and fitness in check is like maybe rank one, you know?
True story. I
Yeah.
mean, and by the way, like if that is the carrot that leads you to do it for a while
Great.
to help you get to the intrinsic part, fuck yeah. Like
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, this is, dude, I could talk to you for like a week fucking straight.
Same.
This is phenomenal, man.
Yeah. I guess my last bullshit I want to say for folks listening, maybe it's, some of this is kind of insane, is it's definitely a good idea to think about the downsides and the dangers of introducing millions of people to advanced pharmaceuticals. 1000% we should be concerned about this. But don't forget about the upsides. Because if the downsides are massive, but the upsides are 10 times bigger, fuck. Let's say we have a world in which 5 million Americans per year for the first few years are non-lethally, but meaningfully, like hospitalized for drug-related concerns from these new pharmaceuticals, right? Oh, like, oh my God, like, just quick little trips to the emergency room. My heart was fluttering. I don't know what to do. That type of shit. I mean, what a massive downside. You'd be okay, making them illegal, make sure no one ever takes them. This is fucking stupid. What if the same combo of drugs took 25 million Americans per year and permanently offboarded them from obesity and being undermuscled and made them healthy and fit in an amazing shape? Still not worth it? Oh my God, on ROI, it's like fucking 100 to 1. So if something has a return on investment, a positive to benefit, or sorry, positive to negative ratio of 10 to 1 or 100 to 1, and you focus exclusively on how bad that one negative is, you can get a lot of stuff to go away that otherwise was really, really, really awesome. That's all I got to say about that.
And yeah, I guess the thought experiment is this, right? Like, how much of the person that's saying this and preaching this is it the ego and the fear of what is it from? And again, I'm speaking from a person that's in the industry, and I coach and I speak and educate and yada
Sure.
yada, right? Like, to where it's your own like shit. Like, what if, because like you said, if there's 6 million people that have an issue, but 20% of Americans, it completely alters them and takes them out of that percentage of people that are at risk for all
Yeah.
these big diseases, right? Like, and it's like, whoa, shit, that's 10 to 1 in a positive. Hmm.
I
Like,
gotta listen. I got a
eh,
thing to say about that. I'll get nice and fucking rude with the shit. Why not? For some vibes. I even have a basketball analogy for it. If you end up losing your job because your entire career sector implodes because of some kind of technological advancement, does that suck in the short term? Yes. Yes, it's a tragedy. It's awful. Your fucking life's work, and all of a sudden everyone's taking pills. I don't need you anymore. Of course it's bad. But what is the alternative exactly? Imagine you told an emergency room doctor, Doc, listen, you've done really well in your life. He said, well, yeah, so far so good. Like, emergency pays the bills. It's really like people love that you're a doctor. It gets you a lot of vibes. Huh? We actually just released this genetic vector into the environment. It's going to make every human like kind of titanium level resistant. So like we're closing 95% of all emergency rooms. You just don't have a job and never will again because humans just don't get hurt doing random shit. Can you imagine the audacity of that doctor to be like, now hold on a second. What do you mean? You want people getting hurt? You want people coming in with broken legs, screaming blood everywhere because you need a fucking job? Are we running out of jobs? Look at the current unemployment rate is like negative 5%. There are like 500,000 jobs at all times that do not get filled. You will not be unemployed any length of time if you just want to go get a job. They're out there. They're always improving in quality. The whole shit is fucking crazy. How dare you keep people away from results by needing a job? That's the like definition of being like a vampire or some shit like that, like a parasite. So is it awesome if people can, is it bad if people have this illusion that the pill is going to make them better? It doesn't. It really fucks up their insides because big pharma is evil and it costs you your job. Of course, that's terrible. That is awful. But if these pills or if these potions and powders, these injections are mature, they're advanced, and they give millions of people the ability to have all the benefits of exercise without ever spending an hour or a minute of a day on exercise, I'm sorry, I'm not kicking miracles in the face. And if it means some people have to retrain to do other jobs, fuck yeah. There's so many things as a personal trainer you could be doing. You're an able-bodied person. You could be going to help homeless people, people in financial need, older individuals. You could be coaching children in sports, working with families on their like collective group fitness. You can be organizing walks through rough terrain as a tour guide. All that shit doesn't matter what kind of shape you're in. Good people shape need tour guides in the fucking Rocky Mountains also. You can be doing amazing shit with your life. You could go learn and teach martial arts. Like there's no pill to make you do good jujitsu. There's no pill to make you good at basketball. And listen, check this out. As soon as people get their bodies they want through biotech and maybe late 2020s, early 2030s, do you think they're just not going to do any physical activity? The growth of rec leagues, of softball, basketball, jiu-jitsu, all the stuff, they're probably going to explode because everyone likes to move and have fun. It's an intuitive human deep trait to want to be involved in physical stuff. Most people aren't involved in it right now. It's either they don't have time, money, or the body to do it with. If you're 40 pounds overweight, you're not going to rec league anything. You're going to snap your shit up, and you are. And you're tired after sprinting from one base to another in softball. You're out of air. You're not going to do that shit ever again. So there's so many ways you're going to be gainfully employed. Do your best as a trainer as it comes. the best times for trainers are still ahead of us. I'm convinced because most people are not in the fitness industry, and these drugs for a long time are just pouring more people into the fitness industry. As that happens, like for example, let's say there's like a course of self confidence enhancement that's sweeping the nation, and bartenders are like, "Fuck, I'm gonna be out of a job." That's why people drink alcohol. Well, for a while, having self confidence increase just gets you into the bar. Many people don't even have enough self confidence to step into a social space. So for a while, everything moves up. And by the time we're up at this era where people are just taking one shot and they just never need to work out again, bro, that sounds pretty fucking good. Like, I'm not missing, there's a lot of people who are training horses so that the horses could be used as taxi cab driver horses in New York City that, like, over time lost their jobs. Like, dude, are we going to go back to horse and buggy for that shit? Fuck that. I like my car just fine. Or my wife's car. I don't have a car. God damn it. That analogy fell apart.
Hey, you know what? I love these perspectives because it's like it makes you think. Some people might have to go, munch on some mushrooms and have some deep
Hell
introspect,
yeah.
but that's good though. This was fantastic, Mike.
Huge
Awesome,
pleasure.
man. Like, I appreciate you so much. This was absolutely great. For I mean, shit. Like at this point in time, if anybody doesn't know you, but still, just in case, where can they find out more information from you? I think probably YouTube is the number one place to go.
YouTube.
But is there
Yep.
anywhere else that they can go?
YouTube's great. YouTube's awesome. Instagram, I post my training on Instagram pretty religiously. YouTube is where you can find me. We put out 4 videos a week of attempts at high quality, scientifically informed fitness content. It's mostly dick jokes. YouTube, RP Strength, Renaissance Periodization, or Dr. Mike. Just click on that stuff, and my big head will be there, and it'll be big and be ahead. So that I can guarantee. Always a huge head.
Appreciate you, man. This was absolutely
Awesome.
great,
Luka, thank you
and
so much for your
hopefully,
time,
like,
man.
soon. All right, brother.